Okay, welcome to lesson 2. This lesson is going to be on locating and reading source materials. And first up, we're going to talk about the structure of a research paper. Now, looking at this pyramid here, you can see at the very top, I talk about research, the research question, and a topic of interest. Chances are you're going to be given a topic, or you'll have a question in mind that you're going to use for your research paper. So that's where this comes in. That's going to be the beginning of any research paper, what it is you're going to write about. Then second down here we see methodology, and basically you'll know if you're going to use a scientific method or you carrying out some type of experiment or empirical research. Is it going to be some type of observational approach or survey approach that you're using, or you're doing a literature review? Whatever your method is for your research paper, you'll usually consider once you have your research question or topic of interest in place. Next up would be to collect data. If you're carrying out any type of scientific research, that's where data collection will come in. And what we're going to discuss mainly today is the location of source materials. Because once you find your materials, that's how it is you're going to be able to obtain supporting or conflicting arguments that can help you to report your study findings. Now, I did say I was going to get into the meat and potatoes of it all. So there's 3 things I want you to remember when it comes to writing in APA style. For one thing, know your research question. If you're like most college students, and especially in your first year, you're usually given a topic and told to write about that specific topic. So that makes it easy. You already know what your topic is or what your research question should be about. For more advanced college students, you may have to come up with your own research question. And sometimes you have no idea what it is you're going to write about or how you're going to get started. For me personally, what I do is I have a BlackBerry, and I have a note section in my BlackBerry that anything that pops into my head on a daily basis or weekly basis, I just key it in, whatever ideas that come to my head. So the reason for that is, if anyone was to look at my BlackBerry notes now, they'll see that I have maybe 100 or more different topics of interest in the event I wanted to write about something or research something. This way, it's sort of a catalog of my own that I created of research questions. So that normally helps. Whether you have a notebook or you have a BlackBerry or an iPhone, whatever it is you use, start by putting questions in there of random things that come into your head that you may want to address later on, even if it sounds really silly, really stupid. I say, it's not stupid, because if it popped into your head, chances are it might just be a good idea, and maybe there's no research out there on it, or very limited research. So not to digress, professional journals for research is always preferred. A lot of times I see papers where it is people put very minimal effort into it. What they'll do is they'll go online, they'll Google their topic, and they'll take the very first thing. They won't even go to page 2 of Google. They'll just take whatever it is pops up there first, and they'll cite it. They'll use that as their main source. Try to avoid that as much as possible for academic papers. Professors do look at journal articles from peer-reviewed journal articles or professional journal sources. So try to limit your research to professional journals. Most importantly is number 3, never plagiarize, always cite your sources. Now, that'll come later on when we go into citations, references, and such, and that's a later lesson. However, it is one of the things you have to remember when writing in APA style. Because you're citing a source does not necessarily mean that you have to put everything down verbatim. I've seen instances where it is a student would cite an entire paragraph verbatim, and then pass it off sort of as their own, and that is plagiarism. Today, professors have access to write checks, such as Turnitin. Turnitin.com is a program that most professors use to see if there are any hits for plagiarism, and that can not only affect your grade, it can also bring on disciplinary actions when it comes to your college career. Now here's a list of the American Psychological Association journals. I mean, there's a large number of journals out there, but if you want, you can always come back, pause this video, and you can either jot these down or see if one interests you, and you can also go directly to their sites. A lot of them have sites, or you can access APA.org's website, where a lot of these journals are located. So how do we locate source materials? Well, once you've identified your research problem, or you've been given a topic to write about, the first step is to review related literature to help you refine how it is you approach your topic. To locate professional literature, you can start by either asking your local or school librarian for assistance. However, today, most students rely on computer access to a multidisciplinary library database. Now, some of these databases include ProQuest, that's also known as PsycArticles, and you'll see that here. They also have PsycBooks, and if you're more advanced in your graduate studies, you are probably familiar with PsycTest. This is an excellent resource here of psychology related journal articles, and you have access to the PDFs that you can pull whatever it is that interests you up to take a good look at it. Another one is EBSCOhost. EBSCOhost is another one of my favorites. It's very simple to use, and to name a few others, there's JSTOR and Sage Publications, Sage Journals Online. All of these work entirely the same by just keying in a search word or search term, and it brings up quite a bit of professional journal articles for you to choose from. Now, before I get into the 4 types of source materials, I just want to say that if you're doing a research on, let's say, false memory and depression, your keywords of interest, and I'll go back, your keywords of interest may include depression, memory, cognition, and emotion. So this is mainly where it is you would type in your search, or your keywords, your search keywords, and that'll basically pull up what it is you're looking for. You can also mix keywords. By mix, I mean, you can have depression and memory, depression and cognition, cognition and emotion, whatever it is you're looking for to help narrow it down, because if you just put depression, you're going to get quite a bit of feedback just on that one broad topic. So you definitely want to narrow it down as much as possible. Plus, it'll help to broaden, modify, and strengthen your initial argument of your paper if you help narrow it down. Now, getting back to the 4 types of source materials, there's 4 types. There's sources of criticism, and these may provide an opposing view to your argument. Now, with this, you can use this to your advantage, because if you can find other supporting evidence that nullifies the critic's point of view, that pretty much helps your argument in your paper. So I like sources of criticism because you want to show 2 sides. You don't want to seem very biased. You don't want to just provide sources that only support your views. You want to also provide those sources that criticize your views, because then you can argue why you feel that their criticism is wrong, and it also strengthens your argument. Another one is sources of new ideas. New proposed ideas or research developments that surround your topic of interest are your sources of new ideas. These are good. These are, the brand new ideas on the block. For example, positive psychology is a very new idea, and it's still widely criticized, but maybe you're doing a research paper on positive psychology and you're looking at these new developments in that particular field. The third one is sources of historical context, and this is pretty much self-explanatory. Some of these provide comparisons of historical and contemporary issues as well. So maybe you want to look up information on Freudian theories. Freud, of course, isn't here today, but you can, of course, look up his information from a historical context and then compare them to what we have going on today. So historical sources are excellent sources as well. And lastly, on the list of types, we have sources of interdisciplinary insight. Now, ProQuest, for example, may cover the same topic of interest across many different disciplines. For example, if you were to do a search on ADHD, it may reveal journal articles in medicine, sociology, psychology, education for sure, and maybe even law. Interdisciplinary sources are a great way to approach a topic from multiple perspectives rather than from one discipline. So these are important to remember. I definitely recommend jotting it down because it'll help you to be able to recognize what type of source it is you have at hand, and if it can help you, of course, with your research paper. Now, what it is I'd like to do from here is I'd like to go ahead and look at some of these databases, well, two of these databases in particular. We'll start here with PsycArticles or ProQuest. Now, what you would typically do from here is you would type in your keyword. In this case, I'm using false memory and depression. We're going to go ahead and narrow it down to full text. We can do peer reviewed. And I'm going to go ahead and hit search. And here you go. You have some image previews. You have the full text PDF, and that's all that full text means. It means that you have full access to it in PDF form. And usually, if you're more seasoned at this, you'll know right off the bat if you see something you like without looking at each and every one of them. There's another way to tell if you'd want to use one of these articles. Let's say you want to do a preview on this one. You'd want to take a good look at the abstract, and the abstract is basically just a one paragraph summary of the contents of the research report. This right here is going to be a lifesaver. It's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of energy. I'll be honest with you, a lot of these papers are 20 some odd pages long or more. And you're not going to have any time to really read through 20 different resources that you find in order to write your research paper. So the best way to know if this is going to help you, if this paper is going to help, is to start by reading the abstracts. It takes less than a minute to read through it to see if it'll help you, and if it's something that you like, you can then go ahead and upload it. Or rather download it, excuse me. And I'm going to go ahead and open this one. Now, once you've downloaded your journal article, you can look for what it is, keywords that you had in mind before, to see if you can narrow down specifically what it is you might use in your research paper, what it is you can cite. So let's say you don't have time to read 11 pages, or you might not even know what half of this stuff is. You know, you're like, ugh, what is this? I'm not reading all of this, but how can I find what it is I'm looking for in this entire paper? Just by reading the abstract, I know it's exactly what it is I want to find. So what you want to do here is you'd want to go ahead and right click, hit find, And you can also use this find option here to locate in this paper your search words, your key terms. So we're looking for anywhere it mentions memory. Let's use that as an example. I'm hitting the arrow over right here. And I know it's in the topic, I know it's in the abstract, but I'm trying to find it in the body of this paper. Well, it's on the first line. Impairments in working memory are considered a core cognitive deficit in schizophrenia. Well, my paper is on false memory and depression, so maybe I should get more specific and see if I could find anything on false memory. Alright, so we see something here. If an incorrect response was given with confidence, it was classified as false memory. Well, I would have to know everything that's going on up here in order for me to use this, so I'm going to look to see what else I can find. And I see something right here. We reason that false memory errors most likely reflect a problem at the encoding stage. This may be something you can use. Based on whatever it is you're writing about false memory and depression, you can write something around this one line here that you can cite in your paper. Now, usually you can come here and highlight. You can find other locations where it's mentioned that you may want to cite as well. And for an example, let's just say we're going to cite right here. We're going to highlight that as well. And then you can save this in a separate folder by going to save as a PDF, and you can always come back to it later on. Now here's a common mistake that most of us make. We often forget to note our citations. When we get to that lesson on references, you'll see a list of references at the end of your paper, and the good thing about PsycArticles or ProQuest is that they actually give you the citation. Now, let me come over here. There it is up top here. You'll see these icons. This one that says cite, once you click on it, it gives you the APA citation that you'll be using at the end of your research paper. Now, what I normally do with this, before I even start writing my paper, remember all this is part of your locating and reading source materials that you're going to use towards your research paper. So before you even started writing, you're trying to gather this information. So if you find something that you like, or that you'd like to use, remember, always remember to come in, get the citation, and save it in a Word document. And there's a reason for that, because you're going to be able to, you're going to have to create a reference page, and it's going to have all these references. And if you have, let's say, 20 to 25 references or sources, chances are you're not going to actually, and I'm losing my trail of thought because I'm looking this up. Let me come back here. Chances are you're not going to be able to remember all of them off the top of your head. So it's good to make a note of them, and I'm trying to actually pull up where it is. I have one that I can show you. Let's try here. Nope, that's not it. And I may have actually, here it is, autism research. This is a good example of one here. Proposed autism references, and these are all of the references. It's my proposed reference list, and if I use them, I normally highlight them if I've started writing my paper, so I know that I've used this reference before. If they're not used, or maybe I decided not to go ahead and use it, I can always delete these. And in another lesson, we'll talk more about making sure these are in alphabetical order and such and such and such. So I'm going to exit out of this and this. So far, that shows you how it is we can obtain a research article. and also use the already given citation. Now if we look at EBSCOhost, it's really the same thing. If we go ahead and we type in our keyword, memory and depression, you can see here it gives us a lot of linked text. These are just as good. If you click on a linked text, it doesn't give you the PDF immediately, but it may have access to that PDF. In this case, it's an outside source from ScienceDirect, but you are able to download the PDF here if it's a linked source. So those are just as good as full text as well. You can also narrow it to full text, or let's say a professor says that he wants something from only within the past 5 years. You can of course update the publication date here, and it'll pull up everything that it has on that topic from within the past 5 years. Well, I hope you enjoyed this lesson. This was lesson 2 on locating and reading source materials. If you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to ask. I'm always available to answer questions. I will be checking them to see about answering them in the order that they're received. I want to thank you again, and I'll see you on lesson 3.